Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to our next Thrinchie. And I'm finding these very addictive. I really am. Look, I've been organised. I've got two ready with the outline already put on. Yay! So this is just one of those books that I just love looking through. Even from the first ones, I just love looking at them. It's just wonderful. I've still got numbers to add to them, but I just love looking at them and going through them. It's just lovely. The book really makes them, because you can look back on them and it just gives you inspiration. I just absolutely love looking back on them. And you know what's weird? Let me show you here. These are the colours that I pulled out, and now I've changed my mind because I'm going through these and just looking at the colours here and what I've used. I might not have changed your mind. I just love them colours. You should go with just what you love, but I just love creating them. They make me happy, and they always look lovely when you place them in the little book. Doesn't take much to make me happy, does it? So what Thrinchie are we on? Get together, Tracy. So we're on Thrinchie number 15. So Thrinchie number 15. And when I type it in to put it in YouTube, I forget every single time which one I'm on. But there you go. That's me all over. And again, I've got too many products out everywhere. So my non-stick craft sheet has got a mind of its own. Look, might just stay there. So I've got my 3-inch square. And what I want to use is, I want to use the seed pods. And I just love that I'm collecting my own little library of imagery now under Tracy Evans Boutique Designs. But I really want to make sure that I use every stamp over and over and over again from stamp one. That's the idea of the Thrinchies, is that we use everything over and over and over, and that our products really get a lot of use. So what I want to do is I want to take the seed pods, and there's a single seed pod as well on its own. So it's TE29. I just love these seed pods. And I'm going to use fossilised amber. I'm a bit obsessed with this colour at the moment. So I'm going to take the fossilised amber. Can you see I'm sort of twisting the ink pad a little bit? That's only because my ink pads are so well used. I really need re-inkers or to get some new ink pads. But I keep plodding. So you'll see me twist it a little bit just to get a really good sort of layer of ink on there. So that's my fossilised amber. And then I'm going to take a little touch of vintage photo. Just to add a little touch of vintage photo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that a very light spritz. So just off camera, literally one little waft of spray, not much. And I'm just going to add this sort of around about there. And I can see that even with that very light spritz, there is some moisture on there. I can see that. And what I can do is I can just let that just rest on there, just so that the card just sucks into the, do you want me to do the sound effects? So that it, it's the sunshine. We've got sunshine today here in Cheshire in the UK, and it just changes your whole mood. I mean, I know I'm not slightly, you know, I'm slightly abnormal anyway, but it just changes your whole mood. There we go. I just love these seed pods. I just think they're wonderful. So, oh, whoops, let me just, there we go. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to grab a little bit of moisture. No idea if my brush is clean, and those that follow me know that my brushes are rarely clean. But what I wanted to show you, do you remember, well, you will if you're following the Thrinchies, do you remember these ones that we created? And I created an extra background. I've had that on one side for ages because I love it so much, because I'm going to create something with it. But that was created from these Thrinchies. They're just lovely. They really spark creativity. I love them, and I love this floral. I love looking back on them. Yes, I know, I'm slightly addicted. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of moisture, and I've got some kitchen roll on the side here should I pick up too much moisture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of push into this. So I'm not dragging the colour out, I'm just sort of softening the colour. Just softening it with a little bit of water. And what I'm not doing is dragging that brown out, I'm sort of pushing up to the brown a little bit. So just making it a bit more solid. There we go, just making it a little bit more solid. You could easily turn it round and have it this way. It's whatever way you wish. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my vintage photo. So let's take vintage photo. I'm not cleaning my brush because that's my darkest colour. And I'm using this like you would a pen. And I'm going to add the vintage photo just where I've added the vintage photo. And what I'm doing is, with my inks, my actual ink pads, is bringing a little bit more depth into the seed pods, just a little bit more of that depth, just so that it's got a little bit more depth to the piece. Now, you often see me many times come in with pencils and add a little bit more depth. Now, I want everything to be more inclusive, and my aim in 2025, like it has been every year, is to show you how wonderful stamps really are, and how you don't need anything else. You can create your own embellishments from stamps, your own ephemera, your own everything. You can create everything with stamps, and they're just wonderful. Now, I'm not going to use pencils on this. I'm just going to use oxides. Now, obviously, you can use your pencils on your Thrinchie if you wish. But what I'm trying to do is to show that should you not have pencils and you're just starting out and you've already made a considered purchase with stamps and you've had inks, because a lot of us have got inks, use what you've got. So if you've got watercolour pencils, whatever you've got. But what I'm trying to show is a lot of us have got the oxides, and if that's all that you've got and you haven't got the pencils, because I've had a few messages where ladies have said, I haven't got the pencils, Tracy. I want to show you that you can still create a wonderful composition just with your inks. So I'm still using vintage photo here. And did you see that I went in with my heat tool? So I went in with the heat tool just to dry the first layer. Now, if I dry the first layer, that means I can go back in and add another layer of the vintage photo, especially if you've got enough ink on your non-stick craft sheet. Just grab a little bit of water. So you can go in and then just add another layer of colour. So my aim here is to show that whatever product you're using, by adding layers, you can get depth. So I'm just adding a little bit more depth. So you can get depth with your inks. So let's give this another dry. Now, by drying this, I can then go on the top with another layer. And what you need to remember is to embrace the colouring. Now, I'm no colouring expert. What I do is what I'm happy with and what I enjoy doing. Simple processes. Don't give me complicated, because it puts me off. So what I'm doing then is going in with another layer of that colour. So because I've dried that and I'm layering this on top, look how fine my brush is. By having a fine brush, I'm not adding too much of anything. I'm just adding little touches of that colour. But because I've dried that, I'm now adding depth. Let's take the stem and we can add a little bit of depth to that stem. Let's take... Now in nature, things look perfect, as in when we look at them, we see the beauty of nature. But you have flowers in nature that are crumpled. You have leaves that are crumpled. You have leaves that are several greens, not one green. Nature is wonderful and very forgiving. So you should be like that in your artwork. So fossilised amber I'm going to take now. So let's take some more water. And what we're doing here is we're embracing our ink pads. So I'm going to come in now with the fossilised amber. And with the fossilised amber, just like you would with your pencils, you're going in to that layer of vintage photo. And what you're doing is you're blending out the edges of the vintage photo so that you haven't got such quite harsh edges. So for instance, on this one, I've got quite a harsh edge. So let's come in and just blend that. Now, I'm going to come in with some of the vintage photo again and just blend that out a little bit more. Just because it's a little bit harsh. Take that, come back to the fossilised amber and just blend the fossilised amber. There we go. So I'm just getting a little bit more depth. So I can see instantly the difference just in adding the depth with the inks. You just have to be patient, not sort of rush what you're doing. So I'm going to come in, and my water is dirty, but I'm going to come into the fossilised amber and just add another sort of layer of that fossilised amber. Also, you can take some clean water, not that that's very clean. You can dab with water, and you can also take some of the colour out. So it's very forgiving when you're using your distress oxides, because you can take the colour back out again. So it's very forgiving. So what we're going to do then, let's just clean all this up. Obviously, you could grab another piece of card. So for instance, let's just clean this moisture up. We could take our other Thrinchie and mop this colour up. Don't waste it. It might not be what you initially wanted to do, was add a background, but why waste it? So let's take, and again, I'm still doing the wafting. I can't help myself. It's just me. Now, by drying it, I can then layer the colour on top, just like we did before. And I also get this dotty feel because I'm not swiping through, I'm dabbing it on top. So can you see these dots here? I'm just dabbing that on top. So I get these little dots of interest. And I dry that in between. So let's grab some more fossilised amber and drop the lid. So let's take some more fossilised amber, and again, just dab that into the ink. You can also spritz your card with water, and you can allow that to do its thing just so that it oxidises, because these are distress oxide. I'll give that a little bit of a dry. Now again, if you want depth and rich layers, you need to add layers. If you love a more gentle colour, then you're happy with the one layer of colour. If you want layers of colour, like I absolutely adore, then what you do is dry that layer and then go again and pick up the little dots of interest. That's how you get more depth, it just has more richness to it. Again, you can continue to spritz with water, should you wish, just so that you can continue to get that oxidization. But there's hardly anything left on there now, and I've not wasted anything. Let's give that a little bit of a spritz now, and we'll just leave that on one side. So let's just mop up anything that's there. So what I'm going to do now is just grab a darker colour. So you just go through your Distress Oxides and grab a darker colour. I'm holding the heat tool on my leg, not a good idea. So I've got ground espresso. I've not even checked what colours I've got. That was just the one that was there, readily to reach. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the ground espresso, and I'm turning my brush in there so that it's coated in that espresso, and I'm going to add a darker touch just to the edge, just to give a little bit more definition. And I can add a little bit down on the stem. Just add that, just to give a little bit more darkness. Now, I'm not overpowering with that colour, and I'm hardly using any water. And I'm just going to sort of, again, so I've got some nice depth on there. Now, to soften it a little bit, I'm going to spritz with water. But look where I'm spritzing from. Really high up. Just so that the whole thing is softened. Now, what I don't want to do, I do not want to go in there with my kitchen roll and dilute that. That's not what I want to do. I want it to be softened. So I'm just going to come in now, just with a wet brush, and just soften those edges, just so it looks a little bit more softer and watery. You can see there's a blob of water there. That's absolutely fine. But you can see I'm not blotting this. The thing that you do if you blot it is you lift that colour. I don't want to do that. I want to keep that intensity of colour. So I'm just drying with the heat tool and not lifting that colour. So I've got a lovely softness there. Now, there's water here, there. I'm going to leave it there. I've got moisture in here. I've just wafted it dry. So I'm then going to take the little text that's on here. Let me move this out of the way. On here, on the seed pods one, you can see I've got the wording seed pods. So I'm going to take that. Now, the idea of the Thrinchies isn't that we are rushing. The idea is we're creating miniature pieces of art that we're just enjoying. It's not about rushing. So I'm going to take Vintage Photo, and I'm going to take the oxide. Now, obviously, this oxide is going to react to that water. So that is absolutely fine. And what it's going to be is very soft. So in some areas, it might be a little bit blurry and watery because I'm stamping into that water. But that's the effect that I want, is so that it's quite sort of watery and soft. So I'm just adding the seed pods text straight into water, straight into everything. So some of that wording, I've got a nice hair on there. Some of that wording, lovely, a lovely little hair. So some of that wording will just bleed and soften. But you can see at the moment, I'm not drying that. I'm just leaving it nice and soft. And we can do what we want on our Thrinchies. And I love the fact that some of you, including the DT, are doing your own version as well. It's wonderful. It's so wonderful to see that as a crafting group, we're coming together and we're creating together and we're using our product. There we go. So I'm going to lift this up. So what we've got now is I've got the seed pods just stamped in the background, but doesn't it look lovely? Just wonderful. So what I'm going to do now is give that a dry. So let's give this a dry. And as it bends, I'm going to hit it from the reverse. There we go. I absolutely love where we've got the water. Oh, just love things like this. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take TE30 and I'm going to, let's pull the stamp out so we can, I love this stamp. Absolutely, it's got some amazing florals on. Personally, I think so anyway. I know I'm slightly biased. So I'm going to use the little wren here, which it's on an A5 stamp, so it's quite a good size actually. So let's grab another. How many acrylic blocks are you going to grab, Tracy? So just grab another acrylic block. So I'm just deciding how I want to do the wren. So when I don't know, let me grab a piece of card. When I don't know what colour I want to stamp something in, I often test it first. So what I'll do, so I will grab, first of all, I'm going to grab my permanent colours and see what they look like. So I'm going to grab Sand Dune. And the pause on Tracy's voice then was because she didn't know what colours. I couldn't speak, I just couldn't say the name. Now, if you get a bit of wobble with your stamps, place another stamp the other side and it just gives some balance. I'm then going to use Portobello. Now, this is just a test piece. So I've got a scrap piece of card and I'm just going to test those colours. So obviously it's a bit liney and everything because that's the way I've done it. So let me just stamp that off. But look how you could create a background with that as well. Just love it. So let's try now with the oxides. So I'm going to go with fossilised amber. Just twisting it a little bit. I'm then going to take a little bit of vintage photo. It doesn't matter what it looks like because this is testing. I'm just testing at the moment. It does help if you actually remember its bottom. But yes, I think I want it in that colour and then I can add more definition. Look at this one though. So now they coordinate with each other and that's just using the excess ink. Oh, I love creating. So what I'm going to do now is do this properly. So I'm going to use fossilised amber. And just make sure there's plenty of ink on there. Now, don't get worried about stamping onto something you've already done. Don't worry about it, because if you get it wrong, we can cut it out. So I've added fossilised amber, vintage photo, and a little bit of ground espresso. And I'm going to add this here now, just onto my background. And I'm just going to give it a few moments. Don't lift it up too quickly. That's part of the problem. You can get frustrated with stamping if you lift your image up too quickly. Or you can just drop it on the floor. I just love it. We're going to add some more definition to that, but this bird is lovely, just lovely. So I'm going to take ground espresso. Honestly, I'm dropping everything on the floor. Ground espresso. Pick up that dark colour and I'm just going to add a little bit of the dark colour. Just so that you can see the little little birdie, just so that you can see him a little bit more with a little bit more definition. So that's the dark colour. This is the ground espresso. I'm going to rinse that then, and I'm going to use clean water, and I'm going to use Vintage Photo. Just pick up a little bit of the Vintage Photo. That's just where his wing is. Just clean that out. Goodness knows why I've got, but I've still got this Vintage Photo here, so let's just spritz that with water. And I've still got this piece here, so I'm going to dab a little bit more Vintage Photo on here, just because it'll give it a little bit more depth, but I'm not going to dry that. I'm then going to take fossilised amber, I'm just going to blend out with the fossilised amber just a little bit of that colour. Let me just, I've got everything everywhere, so just blending out with the fossilised amber, just so you can see. That's me looking through camera really sort of helps. Look how you can add that definition and depth with the oxidings. Oh, it's patience. It's just having a little bit of patience when layering your colour. And at the end of the day, we're being creative, so it isn't about rushing. There we go. I just love that. Absolutely love it. And we can go in and we can obviously add some touches of white as well. So what I'm going to do then is, where's that scrap of card? I'm dangerous. So on this stamp, there's also a spare seed pod. Let's take this. I just keep losing the stamps. Where's the actual acetate? It's scary, really, how I can lose a stamp in a square space. I just don't know how it's even possible, if I'm honest. Let's just plunk. Oh, it's right. Oh, for goodness sake. Dangerous doesn't even cover it. Right. So there's an actual spare seed pod here. Tracy, so dangerous. So I'm going to take ground espresso. So, and I'm going to take Vintage Photo. And just stamp these in this colour. So you can see when you stamp it, we've got some grains there, which we can just smooth out. Now, you don't have to do this if you don't wish. So I'm going to just cut one out, because we can't add much dimension. Well, you can, it's your book, to our Thrinchies, because we don't want the book to get too bulky. Again, that doesn't matter if it is bulky, but obviously not too much, because we want to be able to add quite a few Thrinchies to each book. Okay. So I'm going to smooth this out now, just like you would with your pencils. Look at that, nice and clean. Not. Look how much pigment is in your oxides, and that's why you can still get depth with your oxides. So I'm going to start here somewhere and push the dark colour into the edge. So push the dark colour into the edge so that the dark colour remains at the edge. So just push that in. Then I will go back. So now we've got our, I call it a wash of colour. So let's give that a dry. So I've not used any pencils. Again, it's your Thrinchie. You can use pencils on yours if you wish. But I need to make sure that everybody can be included in the Thrinchies. So take your ground espresso and we can come back in now. A little bit too much water on there. We can come in with the darker colour and just blend that out. So that's a wash of the same colour. If you've got your jar of water around, then you can just dip in to clean water. So let's go to vintage photo now and just blend that out. Okay. So you've got a little bit of ground espresso here. So let's just add that to this card as well. Just give a little bit more depth. I'm going to give this a dry now. It's got lots of layers on there. But we may as well not waste anything. And while I've dried it a little bit, we'll pick up a little bit more of that brown. That card's had that many layers. So what I'm going to do then is take fossilised amber and just add a touch to this. Just so it's got a hint of the colour just at the edges. Let's give this a little bit of a dry. A little bit more. That's very watery. Let's just add a little bit more of that. So it's coloured in a completely different way than the way we coloured the first ones, because we've just added the brown and we're just adding a little touch of this just so that it's got a different look. So now I can add this as a little bit of dimension now to here. And then you look for your adhesive and you can't find it. So let's add our adhesive to the little seed pod, and I'm going to add that just sort of here. Just allow that. There we go. So we've got a little bit of dimension, but not too much. Oops. So then I'm going to add a little bit of shading now. So I'm going to add a little bit there, a little bit sort of down here, a little bit. I always think that it's better just to take your time and just add a few sort of really good finishing touches. Now we don't want to go in with that because I've got the fossilised amber. Look how much pigment is in that fossilised amber before I even get clean. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading. Just so that it's got a little bit more shading. Just around a couple of those. Now I'm going to give, that was just my Inktense pencil, so let's just give this a dry. going to add some wording as well, but I'm going to add some splatters. So I'm just going to add a few splatters. Just to there, and so that it doesn't react too much, because there's moisture in that, I'm going to dry it, just so that the Posca pen doesn't react too much with the oxide, because it's got moisture in there, so that it stays pretty whitish. You can use your bleed proof as well if you wish. Oh, just love it. So I'm going to then grab my smaller Posca pen, and now we're going to add some touches of white, and Tracy can't tell whether the white's working or not. Don't forget, my white Posca pen is used over waxy pencils, so I need to make sure that it, that it's sort of clean. So let's move that out of the way, and I'm going to add a little bit, so that we've got our eye. Let's just add a little bit of white. Let's add some white to our seed pods. Just to give them a touch of white. I just love that, really love it. So you've then got the next one. Let's just look how much it's oxidized, sort of the cloudy feel. Let's give this a dry. Turn that over, and I want to add the word seed pods to our piece. So let's take the word seed pods, and how many acrylic blocks can you have out in one time? You'll be surprised. So I'm now going to stamp this in my black ink, and the reason I'm stamping in the black ink is so that it really sort of stands out against that backdrop. Let's take that. Take another piece of white card, because this will then really sort of stand out against the background. And we'll just cut this out. I may even get in the garden today, although Ian does say it's really cold out. Okay, let's cut that. And this is why I love stamps. There's just so many possibilities. So many possibilities. It's just wonderful. So I can then take my adhesive. I can just add the seed pods here, like so. So you've got the seed pods stamped in the background. And you've got the word in the foreground as well. And you really should let that dry, but I just carry on. Just to give a little bit of shading underneath this. Now it will affect the oxide a little bit because they're oxides, but you'll still get that depth in there. Just wonderful. So I'm going to bring in this piece now. Let's dry this. Just dry from the back as well, because this was really wet. Okay. And I have to say, I'm slightly obsessed with these colours at the moment. So I'm going to take, where are you? Let's take that stamp out the way. I'm going to take TE32 that's got my oblong on there. And when you do one Thrinchie, you'll find you're inspired to do more. So I'm going to take, actually no, we'll have the black. I'm going to take Nocturne. And then I've just wiped my fingers on it, which is really good because I'm going to add this here. Like so. Now that is soaked in oxide, so I just let that sit there a little bit longer. And then I'm going to take the seed pods, text, again in black. I'm just going to, do I want it on one side? No, let's put it in the middle. Stamp the seed pods in the centre there. And then I'm going to add this one seed pod. Do I want it that way? Yes, let's have it that way for a change. So this time, I'm just going to use the ground espresso because you can see we had the white card, so you can see everything. Here the background is covered, so I'm just going to take the ground espresso and I'm literally just going to go around the edge of the seed pod ish, and I'm going to take, can you see it's sort of got a straight bit here? And there's a point there, so I'm just going to touch that point just on there. And that gives me enough of an impression. It's not perfect, but let's just, that's better. So I've got my impression of the seed pod. So now I've got my dark edge and I'm going to use Vintage Photo. So let's take Vintage Photo. Let's take a little bit of water. And then I'm just going to blend the Vintage Photo into our edge. Do you want to, like, why have I got so much Vintage Photo? Nobody knows. So let's just wipe that up. And I'm going to take some fossilised amber, but I need to dry this now. Just give that a little bit of a dry. Let's take that fossilised amber, like so. So take loads of that fossilised amber now, and now we'll come in and just add, because obviously it's going to look different, isn't it, to the previous one, because you've got all that ink in the background. So it's going to look different, but I'm not going to blot that and dilute the image. We don't want to do that. So I've dried it, and then I'm going to come back to fossilised amber and add more layers of that colour. I'm not blotting, so I'll just dry. Okay, so let's just pick that up. And you can see now I'm enjoying my stamps. I'm enjoying them. So what I'm going to do now is take one of my little cats. I always think I pick the right one, and most of the time I pick the wrong cat. But you can tell when I'm getting excited and enjoying what I'm doing, because I have stuff everywhere and tidying goes out the window. So I'm taking one of my little cats from TE36. Make sure it's not going to drop off. And then I'm going to add, no, wrong cat. I have a funny thing where I'll explain. Let's place you down. He needs cleaning. Let's place the black ink again. Look how much black ink I add. Again, just make sure it's not going to fall off. I want him facing the seed pod. Yeah, I want him on the seed pod. So I want my little cat on the seed pod, but I like him to be facing the focal imagery. So I like him to be facing that. Now, you need your cat, you need to keep the ink on there for a few moments. Just love that. Just makes me happy. So I'll add some touches of white eventually, but I'm going to add a little bit of shading. So I'm going to add some shading underneath this. I'm going to add a little bit of shading underneath the seed pod. Let's take a little bit of water, preferably with a clean. It's good though, because you can see how pigmented the oxide is. So I'm just touching just to add a little bit more depth, little bit of shading here, and then we'll just water that out a little bit, just so that we've got the depth on there. And we have touches of white that we want to add on there as well. But I'm then going to go back to seed pods to add the seed pods like we did before. Let's bring this in the background, like so. I'm bringing this in so that you can see. So I'm using vintage photo. Now you're not going to see much, that's quite a dark background, but it'll just give enough. I will lift this up, so this is vintage photo. And I like the fact that I'm really enjoying the process and I'm taking my time like I would on a card to develop the whole composition. So I'm adding seed pods just all the way down in the background, just like I did with the previous one. Just so that it's got that. I'm going to lift this up so that you can see. Just so that you can see, you've got that stamped in the background as well. And they go beautifully together. It's just lovely. I'm going to take my black pen and just highlight his eye a little bit more. There we go. Just a touch. And I'm just going to highlight just a little bit of the wing, just a little bit, only a tiny little bit. I know I'm a pain, how much I just faff. So let me just, so I want one seed pod now over his little head. So you can leave it like that if you wish. It's your Thrinchie. Do what you wish, as much as you wish, or as little as you wish. So I'm going to add this seed pod now, just over. There we go, it gives me an outline so I can see exactly what I've got. So I'm going to take the vintage photo. And if you wanted to, you could have a piece of the 4x6 card on one side and you could pick up this ink just so that you've got another background. But this shows you that you can still get depth with your oxides, quite easily get depth with your oxides. Absolutely no problem at all getting depth with your oxides. So I'm going to take some of the fossilised amber, so you can see this is coloured in a different way to the first ones. Take the fossilised amber. Slightly obsessed with this colour at the moment, not that you can tell. So I'm just taking the fossilised amber and just adding this. And I'm going to pick this up now, this fossilised amber, and I'm going to add a few little splatters of the fossilised amber just to both pieces. You'll see more on the white, but I'm still adding it as another dimension. I'm going to lift it up like I always do, just so you can see what I'm doing. So let's just clean my brush so we remember. I've got to add some dimension yet, but can you see you've got the splatters of fossilised amber on there, but they are actually on here as well, here. And it's worth it because it does add another dimension to your design. So let's just give this a dry. And I'm doing that wafting the heat tool, can't help it. Terrible habit, but hey ho. So I'm just going to, that's still got moisture in, but it's fine. I'm going to add a little bit of definition at the base of here. Just give a little bit more depth. There we go. Now I'm going to add some Posca pen to this one. If you don't want to add any Posca pen to your wording, you can just cover that up with a piece of card. I'm just giving this a dry again so that it doesn't react too much. Oh, you're not going to believe this. The way the Posca has landed, let me show you. I haven't put eyes in, but the cat looks like it's got eyes. That's just a Posca pen, the way it's just landed. Perfect. So I'm just going to add a little bit of white just here and there. That's it. That's it. Just so that we have this. And it's when they go in the actual album. Let's take the album. So I'm going to take my album. Let's take my adhesive. And you know, I've had the lid off this, totally forgotten. Fine. So I'm going to add this here. Now, obviously, I've added lots of medium, lots of moisture, so just keep your fingers there and allow it just to take hold. Like so. I mean, this one has got so many bends and bumps and... And what I like about the Thrinchies is you might come back to them in 2 days' time and think, no, that actually wants something else. That's fine. Come back to them and add something else. It's easy to add things than take them away. So sometimes if you're not sure, less is more. And just come back to them. There we go. It does make them when they're actually in the book. It's just, oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. So I'm going to grab, I tell you what, let's spend a couple of minutes just putting some stamps back. And then what you end up with is you've got the acetate to some, not to others. Honestly, you can't make this up. How can you have so many things out there? It is. See, there's my little bird. Just spend a couple of minutes just placing this back. What was I just going to do then? Oh, numbers. So I've got my numbers here from TE36. So we've got snippet 15 and 16. So we need that 1, 5 and 6. Or I need that, in other words. Let's grab that scrap of card. Let's grab our black ink. Probably shouldn't stamp this 5 and 6 close together like that, but there you go. And let's just stamp them again, just, well, I need another 1 anyway, just in case. There we go. There's just something about this fossilized amber colour that I just adore. And you could change it by adding sort of some crackling campfire or something like that to it. I've just put 6 where the 1 goes. So it'd be quite easy to change the colour. So let's grab that punch. Again, you don't have to have a paper punch. You could quite easily cut them out, not a problem. The only problem you've got with the punch is that it can't be too near. It can't be too far away from the edge, or else my punch doesn't reach. That's better. Oh no, you've still not done it, have you? Because you need another 1. You two can faff like Tracy. There we go. So now I can add my numbers. You can either do them here on the surface and then glue them at the same time. I like to put them on here. A little bit of adhesive. Now I'm not going to press that down. I'm just going to hang fire just so that I can place this, come on, underneath. Like so. Then take number 16. Don't press that down. And the way I am with my concentration when I'm talking at the same time, one of these days I'm going to place the wrong number down. It's going to happen. I'm just warning you now. There's 16, there's 15. So you've got 13, 14, 15 and 16. Look at the state of my hands. Just what a terrible mess. Just clean the end of my adhesive. And just put that in. It takes me longer to put the little needle in. But then you can see that you've now got your 2 Thrinchies. And what you can do is you can walk away, and if you feel you want to add something, well then you can add something more should you wish. And what I mean by that is, like for instance, let's just where's it gone? So it's the time when you should sort of embrace your stamps. So for instance, you've got this little floral here. So I'm really happy with them, but you know me, I love a good waffle. But let me just bring this TE26 stamp that is called Jar of Wishes. And you've got this little smaller flower in there. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite happy with them. They're finished, but let me move these scissors out of the way. But this is how the Thrinchies inspire. Piece of card. Let's take my fossilised amber. Take the fossilised amber. So it's this floral I'm using here on TE26. There we go. So we've got this little floral. So I've stamped it in fossilised amber. And I'm going to take ground espresso. And this is what I'm saying is, obviously, you know, art is subjective. You know, what I see and what you see might be 2 different things. I'll take a little bit of moisture off there. So I'm going to come in and just add a little bit of the ground espresso. Do you like how I have to check because I can't remember the colours? So just take that ground espresso. Now you've got the fossilised amber in the background. Let's bring a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to, again, you can have extra pieces of card on one side to mop up any extra ink. So I'm going to take the vintage photo, come into the vintage photo and just blend a little bit of the vintage photo just into there. And then I'm going to come to fossilised amber. And I've still got some vintage photo on there. And even with just a little layer, you can still get depth. So just dry that a little bit. Take a little bit more of fossilised amber, just so that you're adding to those layers of colour. Just so the fossilised amber then becomes a little bit brighter. So dry that again. I'm then going to come back to ground espresso. And is it worth it? Oh, yes, absolutely. Because if you're pleased with what you've done, there's no more satisfying feeling than knowing that you have created it. So I'm then going to come to my fossilised amber again, which if I don't clean the brush, it's going to have that tinges of brown. So I've got a clean brush, a little tiny bit of water, and I'm going to pick up the fossilised amber again. Now, the only way to layer the colour is to dry that in between, so that you're layering the colour on the top like you would as if this was your pencils. No different. You're just adding that layer of colour just like you would with your pencils. So let's just cut that out. So I'm just cutting it out, edge, right to the edge, so that it's not got any white edge. So then I just want to add my touches of white. So I'm going to add sort of a touch of white, just, and then coming down the stem. Let's not square that off, let's just curve that. Let's just give that a little bit of a dry. And then come back in with the white again. Just layering like you would with your oxides. And now I can add my little floral on the top. I think I'm going to add it there. So again, there's always opportunities to add to your design. And this is what I'm... Undo the whole thing, Tracy. Well done. So there's always opportunities to add to your design. I unscrewed the wrong lid then. So you can go back and you can look at your designs and say, would I like to add a little bit more? I'm going to add some darker shading around the edge, just so that that stands out a little bit more. And if you've added too much adhesive, just use a piece of white card just to pick up any extra adhesive that you don't need. And then we're going to add a little bit of shading. Where are you? There we go. Just going to add a little bit of shading just around there. I can then take my little fine brush that is covered in fossilised amber, but you can see that I'm really enjoying myself and what I'm doing. It just really does spark creativity. There we go. And then I'm just going to add a few more splatters. I'm trying to turn that now as well. Just with my smaller Posca pen, just so that the floral is included. And then that is our Thrinchies completed. And if I just lift these up, just so that you can see, it just makes me laugh how the Poscas have landed there perfectly for two eyes. But just so that you can see, I've just loved those. And I love it that I close the book and I open it and it inspires me again. So I hope it inspires you to give these a go. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.